The Phoenix summer heat pressed against my living room window as I stared at my phone screen. The message from my son glowed in the dim light. "Dad, I need to see you. Tomorrow at Mastro's Steakhouse, 7 p.m. This is important. Bring your checkbook." I hadn't heard from Daniel in 4 years. 4 years of silence, broken only by automated birthday texts that felt more insulting than the silence itself. And now this. My hands trembled slightly as I set the phone down on the coffee table. The ceiling fan whirred overhead, barely cutting through the desert heat. Outside, the neighborhood kids splashed in someone's pool, their laughter a sharp contrast to the cold weight settling in my chest. 4 years ago, Daniel had accepted a position at a tech startup in San Francisco. He'd called it his big break, the opportunity he'd been waiting for. I'd been proud, genuinely proud. I'd helped him pack his apartment, driven him to the airport, and watched him disappear through security with a confidence I'd never possessed at his age. The first year, we'd talked every couple of weeks, then monthly. Then the calls stopped altogether. His mother's death 3 years ago had brought him home for exactly 48 hours. He'd sat in the front pew at her funeral, stone-faced, and left for the airport before the reception ended. No explanation, no comfort, no shared grief. I'd tried. God knows I'd tried. I'd called, texted, sent emails that bounced back unread. His voicemail stayed full. His social media showed a life of rooftop parties and expensive dinners, a world where I apparently didn't exist. Until last week. I'd made what I thought was an innocent post on Facebook. A photo of my new Lexus SUV in the driveway. Caption reading, "Finally treating myself after 40 years of teaching. Retirement has its perks." Below it, I'd mentioned selling my rental properties and consolidating everything into a more manageable portfolio. The post had gotten the usual likes from former colleagues and old friends. What I hadn't expected was the immediate response from my son. Not a public comment, not even a private message of congratulation. No, Daniel had texted his college buddy Mike, who still lived in Phoenix. And Mike's wife, bless her indiscreet heart, had mentioned it to her book club, which included my neighbor Patricia. Patricia had knocked on my door the next morning, coffee in hand, and concern on her face. "Tom," she'd said, settling into my kitchen chair, "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Daniel's been asking Mike questions about your finances. Very specific questions. About the rental properties, about your retirement accounts, about whether you'd mentioned any major expenses coming up." The coffee had gone cold in my hand as she continued. "Mike thought it was sweet at first, like Daniel was finally taking an interest in making sure you were set. But then Daniel asked about your will, Tom, about whether you'd updated it recently. And Mike got uncomfortable. I'd thanked Patricia, assured her I could handle it, and spent the rest of the day staring at my phone, waiting. The text had come that evening. Not, "How are you, Dad?" Not, "I'm sorry we haven't talked." Just that cold request for dinner with my checkbook. Now, sitting in my living room as the Arizona sun began its descent, I made a decision. I pulled out my laptop and started making calls. First to my financial advisor, Marcus Chen, then to my attorney, Elizabeth Reeves, then to Street, Mary's Hospital Foundation, where Catherine had volunteered for 15 years before the cancer took her. By midnight, I had a plan. By morning, I had all the documentation I needed. By noon, I'd signed papers that changed everything. The Mastro's Steakhouse parking lot was full when I arrived at 6:45. I'd worn the navy blazer Catherine had bought me for our 40th anniversary, the one I saved for special occasions. This felt like it qualified, though not in the way I'd hoped. Daniel was already seated when the hostess led me to the table. He'd chosen a quiet corner booth, I noticed. Private, strategic. He stood as I approached, and for a moment, my breath caught. He looked so much like his mother. Same dark eyes, same sharp jawline. But Catherine's eyes had been warm, even in her final days. Daniel's were calculating as they swept over me, cataloging, assessing. "Dad." He extended his hand. Not a hug, a handshake, like I was a business associate. "Daniel." I took his hand briefly, then slid into the booth across from him. He'd already ordered a bottle of wine. expensive from the look of the label. The sommelier poured 2 glasses with practiced elegance before disappearing. Daniel lifted his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. I didn't touch mine. "What's this about, Daniel?" He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Slightly. "Can't a son want to catch up with his father? After 4 years of nothing? After missing your mother's birthday, her death anniversary, every single holiday?" I kept my voice level. "No, Daniel, this isn't a social call. So let's skip the small talk. What do you need?" Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, maybe, that I wasn't playing along. He took a long sip of wine, set down the glass, and leaned forward. "All right, fine, I'll be direct." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it to face me. It was a real estate listing. A stunning modern home in Los Altos Hills. 7 bedrooms, infinity pool, panoramic views of the valley. The price tag made my stomach clench. $4.2 million. "I'm getting married," Daniel said. "Her name is Vanessa. She's a partner at a venture capital firm. This is the house we want. We're putting in an offer next week." I looked from the phone to my son's face. "Congratulations on the engagement. I wish you'd told me sooner. I'd like to meet her." "You will." "At the wedding." He waved dismissively. "The thing is, Dad, this house is perfect. It's in the right neighborhood, the right school district for when we have kids. Vanessa's firm is doing well. My stock options are solid, but we need a bigger down payment to get the interest rate we want. The mortgage broker said if we can put down 40% instead of 20, we'd save almost $3,000 a month." I did the math in my head. 40% of $4.2 million. You're asking me for $1.6 million. Not asking. Proposing an investment. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Inside were spreadsheets, projections, a formal proposal typed on letterhead from some financial planning firm. "It's all here. The house will appreciate at minimum 12% annually in this market. We'll pay you back with 5% interest within 7 years. It's a solid investment, Dad. Better than leaving that money sitting in some boring retirement account." The waiter appeared, recited the specials, took our orders. I ordered the salmon without really hearing myself. Daniel got the ribeye, rare. Of course he did. When we were alone again, I closed the folder without looking at it. "You want $1.6 million, I repeated. "And in exchange, I get to be your creditor. With a contract, interest rates, payment schedules. It's a smart business arrangement." Daniel's tone was patient, like he was explaining something simple to a child. "Look, I know we haven't been in touch much. That's on me. Work has been insane. But this is a chance for us to build something together. To be partners. Isn't that what family does? Helps each other succeed? Family." The word tasted bitter. "Is that what we are?" "Of course we are. You're my father. I was your father 3 years ago when your mother died, and you couldn't spare more than 2 days. I was your father on all those holidays you couldn't find time to call. I was your father when I had my heart surgery last year, the one you never even knew about because you never checked in." His jaw tightened. "I've been building a career, Dad. Some of us can't coast on a teacher's pension and rental income. Some of us are actually trying to make something of ourselves." The words hit like a slap, but I'd been expecting them. This was who Daniel had become, or maybe always had been. I'd just been too blind to see it. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "If I'd never posted that photo of the Lexus, if you'd never heard about me selling the properties, would you be sitting here right now? That's not fair." "Answer the question, Daniel." He took another drink of wine, longer this time. "You raised me to be practical, Dad, to make smart decisions. This is a smart decision, for both of us." "No." I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket, the one I'd been carrying since this morning. "A smart decision is what I made yesterday." I slid it across the table. Daniel frowned, opened it, pulled out the papers inside. I watched his face as he read. Confusion first, then disbelief, then a flush of anger that started at his collar and crept up his neck. "What is this?" His voice was tight, controlled, dangerous. "It's a charitable remainder trust. I created it yesterday with my attorney. Every asset I own, the retirement accounts, the proceeds from the rental sales, the investment portfolio, the house, everything is now irrevocably placed in that trust. The Catherine Morrison Memorial Fund, named after your mother. You can't do this. He was still reading, flipping through pages frantically. I already have. The trust will pay me a fixed income for the rest of my life. When I die, everything remaining goes to St. Mary's Hospital Foundation, specifically to their cancer research wing, the same wing where your mother spent her last 6 months. The place you visited exactly once. Daniel's hands shook as he set down the papers. This is insane. You're cutting me out of your will over a dinner invitation? I'm not cutting you out of anything, Daniel. There's nothing left to be cut out of. The trust owns everything now. I can't change it, can't dissolve it, can't give you access to it even if I wanted to, which I don't. Over dinner? He repeated, his voice rising. You're destroying your son's future over one dinner? No. I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady even as my heart pounded. I'm protecting the legacy of a woman who gave 40 years of her life to teaching, to family, to helping others. A woman you couldn't be bothered to call on her birthday. I'm making sure that the money she and I saved together, the life we built, goes to something that matters, to helping people, not to buying houses for someone who sees his father as a bank. The waiter appeared with our meals, read the tension at the table, and set down the plates with record speed before disappearing. You'll regret this, Daniel said, his voice cold now. Controlled. When you're old, when you need help, don't expect me to be there. The laugh that escaped me was unexpected, bitter. Daniel, you haven't been there for 4 years. Do you really think that's a threat? He stood abruptly, threw his napkin on the table. This isn't over. I'll contest it. I'll fight this in court. The trust is ironclad. Elizabeth Reeves spent 20 years as a trust and estate attorney before going into private practice. She designed it specifically to prevent any challenge. You can try, but you'll just waste money on lawyers. I picked up my fork, looked at my salmon. Your dinner's getting cold. Go to hell, Dad. He stormed out, leaving me sitting alone at the table with 2 untouched meals and a half-empty bottle of expensive wine. Around me, other diners tried not to stare. I took a bite of salmon. It was perfectly cooked, but I could barely taste it. The waiter approached cautiously. Sir, is everything all right? Can I get you anything? A box, please, for both meals. I wasn't going to let good food go to waste, even if I had no appetite. And the check. The gentleman already paid on his way out, sir, for the wine and both meals. Small mercies, I supposed. Though I suspected it was less about generosity and more about making a statement. Daniel had always been good at grand gestures when they cost him little emotionally. I drove home through the Phoenix twilight, the boxed meals on the passenger seat, Patricia's porch light already on as I pulled into my driveway. She was sitting on her front steps, and before I could get out of the car, she was crossing over. How'd it go? She asked gently. About as expected. I grabbed the meals, locked the car. Want some very expensive steak? I seemed to have extra. We sat in my kitchen while I told her everything. She listened without interruption, her hand occasionally patting mine across the table. You did the right thing, she said when I finished. You know that, don't you? I don't know anything anymore, Patricia. He's my son, my only child, and I just made sure he'll never forgive me. He made that choice 4 years ago, Tom. You just stopped pretending otherwise. After she left, I sat in the living room where this had all started, staring at Catherine's photograph on the mantel. She was laughing in the picture, taken at some faculty party years ago. She'd worn that blue dress she loved, the one that matched her eyes. Did I do the right thing? I asked her photograph. Would you be proud or disappointed? The house was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning, but I thought I knew the answer. Catherine had always said that love without accountability was just enablement, that sometimes the most loving thing you could do was let someone face the consequences of their choices. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Vanessa, Daniel's fiancée. He told me what you did. I just want you to know that we don't need your money. We'll be fine without you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. They would be fine, I was sure. Daniel had his career, his stock options, his fiancée, with her venture capital connections. They'd get their house, maybe not in Los Altos Hills, but somewhere nice. They'd have their wedding, their life, their children, who I would probably never meet. And I would be here, in this house, too big for one person, with my fixed income from the trust, and my memories of a woman who'd known how to love without keeping score. Another text came through, this one from Marcus Chen, my financial advisor. Tom, just confirming everything is finalized with the trust. The hospital foundation director called. Very grateful. They want to know if you'd be interested in joining their advisory board. Catherine would be honored. Give me a call if you're interested. I looked at the message, then at Catherine's photograph again. An advisory board, a way to stay connected to her legacy, to the work that had mattered to her. A purpose that didn't involve waiting by the phone for a son who would never call. Okay, I whispered to the empty room, to Catherine's smile frozen in time. Okay, I typed back to Marcus. I'm interested. Let's talk tomorrow. The Phoenix night had fully descended now, the heat finally breaking. Through the window, I could see Patricia's house, lights warm and welcoming. Beyond that, the rest of the neighborhood settling in for the evening. Families having dinner, kids doing homework, couples watching television together. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. Not anymore. There was a difference. I was learning. Loneliness was waiting for someone who would never show up. Being alone was making peace with the space you occupied, finding value in your own company. My phone rang. I almost ignored it, but the number was local, vaguely familiar. I answered. Mr. Morrison, this is Dr. Sarah Liu from Street Mary's Foundation. Mr. Chen gave me your number. I hope that's all right. Of course. I wanted to call personally to thank you. The Catherine Morrison Memorial Fund will make an enormous difference to our research program. We're about to start a clinical trial for a new immunotherapy treatment, and your donation will help fund the first phase. I never had the privilege of meeting your wife, but I've heard wonderful things from our staff who worked with her. She would be happy to know the money is going to help people. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Mr. Morrison, I also wanted to extend an invitation. We're having a small gathering next month, just introducing some of our major donors to the research team. It would mean a lot if you could attend. Put faces to the names, see where Catherine's legacy is going. I'd like that. And I meant it. Thank you, Dr. Liu. After we hung up, I sat for a while longer in the gathering darkness. Tomorrow, I would call Marcus back. I would learn about the advisory board. I would start building a new life. One that didn't revolve around waiting for scraps of attention from someone who'd already moved on. Tonight, I would grieve. Not just for the relationship with Daniel that had ended at that dinner table, but for the relationship that had never really existed. The one I'd imagined, the one I'd hoped for, the one where he genuinely wanted to reconnect, not just to access my bank account. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is stop protecting their child from reality. Stop making excuses for them. Stop hoping that this time, things will be different. I'd spent 4 years making those excuses, carrying that hope. Now I was done. The trust was irrevocable, just like the choice I'd made. There was no going back, no changing my mind, no moment of weakness where I could give in and write a check. And strangely, that felt like freedom. I pulled out my laptop and opened my email. There were messages from former teaching colleagues, from friends I'd been meaning to catch up with, from a community center asking if I'd be interested in leading a creative writing workshop for adults. I started typing responses. Yes, I'd love to get coffee. Yes, let's plan that lunch. Yes, I'd be interested in teaching again, sharing what I knew, staying connected to the community. Catherine used to say that every ending was a beginning if you were brave enough to look at it that way. I'd thought she was being overly optimistic, putting a positive spin on loss. But sitting here now, in our house, with her photo watching over me, and a future that no longer included waiting for Daniel to call, I understood. This was an ending. But it was also a beginning. And for the first time in 4 years, I felt like I could breathe.